Hey everyone, it's Matt Added here from Twitch, or I guess from Magical Line, you might just know me. But today I'm going to be doing a deck tech with Scapeshift, and I'm also going to be doing a playthrough of a daily event. Um, at the time of doing this is right before Battle for Zendikar comes out, so we've already seen the set, we already know what's in it, people are already making their speculations on what the changes are going to be. We also know that the ban list hasn't changed for Modern. They just announced, I think yesterday, from when I'm doing this video, that Modern has no changes for the ban list going into uh, Battle for Zendikar. So, this deck is based off of, this list is based off of the fact that there isn't any changes to the metagame, really. So, in general, I'll delve into it and I'll talk about what Battle for Zendikar offers later. But, in general, for you guys who don't know, Scapeshift lets you sacrifice any number of lands and then search your library for that many lands, put them in play tapped. Now, that isn't how do you kill them with that, but Valak at the Moon Pinnacle is whenever mountains enter the battlefield under control, if you control 5 other mountains, you get to deal 3 damage to target creature player. So what you can do is sacrifice 7 mountains, get 1 Valakut, plus 6 lands that count as mountains. So either mountain or steam vents, stomping grounds, a combination usually. And they all come into play at the same time, and they all trigger. And with 7 lands, you get 1 Valakut, 6 mountains, so 6 times 3 would be 18 damage. With 8 lands, you can get 2 Valakuts, and then it does double that, so 36 damage. And that's usually enough to kill them. So that's how you kill them. That's the one-card combo that Scapeshift is. So Scapeshift plus 7 or 8 lands usually kills the opponent. Now the rest of the deck is kind of just making sure we get to that point. So a bunch of ramp spells. We have 9 ramp overall, 4 Search, 4 Tribe Elder, 1 Farseek, just to accelerate our ramp so we can get, potentially turn 4, turn 5 kills. And then the rest is kind of a control shell with the blue stuff. So we have counter spells like Remand, Is a Charm, Cryptic. Then we have like Removal with Bolt, Is a Charm, Harvest Pyre, Anger the Gods. Then we have more like draw stuff, digging your deck like Pierce your deck, Compulsive, Repeal, etc. And that really fills out the deck. We have some Snapcasters too, just a powerhouse card in Modern overall. So basically the way this deck functions is just you're basically a control deck that has a 1-card combo finish. So you play the control game, try to control the board, try and stop your opponent from comboing off or doing whatever it is they're doing in Modern, because people can do a lot of things in Modern. And eventually you make your land drops, and you'll have lands, and you'll kill them with Scapeshift. In general, this strategy is very good at playing against other control decks, against other blue decks in general, because you get so many lands to play with your ramp, you get a mana advantage, and it's really hard for them to really play aggressive against you. Like Splinter Twin decks, Grixis decks, stuff like that, or usually they can't get too much pressure on you, and then you're able to take control of the game when you have a ton of lands in play, and powerful spells like Cryptic and Scapeshift. Against like Jund and other stuff like that, that's why we have all these removal spells, Harvest Pyre, Bolts, things like that try and get us to the late game and through the early threats. What was I going to say? Against the aggro decks, the reason why we have like 3 Lightning Bolts, Is a Charm, Anger the Gods is for the aggro decks like Burn, the Zoo, Nacatl Burn decks, the Merfolk decks, the Affinity decks of the format. That's why we have all these answers right here. And I think I like one thing that ties it up now is recently I've been playing Peer Through decks, multiple of them, because it lets you find what you need. If you need a counterspell, then you can find Cryptics, or it helps you find Anger the Gods, helps you find Harvest Pyre, Lightning Bolts, whatever it is, helps you find the combo too. So basically that's the shell of the deck. You just want to be streamlined, as consistent as possible. Looking at the sideboard, we get to see that we have like a control package here, which is kind of like all these blue cards. Dispels, Counterflux, Teferi, all very good at fighting against other blue decks, other control decks, making sure that you can get your combo through. Jace is also good at that. Jace is also pretty good against the Jund decks as well. Or any black-green variant that try to grind you out can get you some good card advantage. If we look at the red section, we have like Combust, good against Twin, stuff like that. We have Roast, in general, good against like Tarmogoyf and Tasker, Gurmag Anglers. Then we have some Shadow Storms against Affinity, because Affinity is really popular these days. A Crozen Grip, also for Affinity, but mainly it's for like Blood Moon, things like that. One thing is with Scapeshift, you can't kill them with Blood Moon in play because it turns all your lands into mounts. You might think is good because of Valakut, but even Valakut's a mount and it doesn't have an ability anymore. So you need to get rid of Blood Moon if it's in play, and Crozen is one way of doing that. Oops, got some packs here. Not a bad thing, but anyways, 4 Baloths. Baloths are mainly against burn decks because you can gain 4 life and it's a good blocker, and against black-green decks with Liliana of the Veil. Because if they play Liliana and make you discard a card, you put a Baloth into play, it's a pretty big game. You can kill their Liliana like on a swing back, and Liliana is usually the problematic card. So 4 Baloth just to deal with those two matchups. They're both very popular tier 1 decks right now, so definitely like that. And 1 Engineer Explosives just to fill it out. Engineered for 3 is usually pretty strong, anywhere from 1 to 3, but because we have so much mana, it's usually just a good card we get to play. So that's like the basic description of the deck. Now, what I want to talk about, I guess, is the few tech choices. So, like, we have in our land section, we have Desolate Lighthouse, which I think is a really good land. Because we're a deck that in general gets to a lot of mana, being able to loot is a pretty free ability, and it's good for digging for our Scapeshift or whatever it is we need. And I've seen twin decks take advantage of that, and I think Scapeshift definitely a deck that can also take advantage of it. Tech choices in the main deck usually are like compulsive, maybe not having both Anger the Gods, Repeal, Harvest Pyre. These cards are situational. I do like having these 1-ofs in the deck, like 1 Harvest Pyre, 1 Compulsive, 1 Repeal, those kind of things, because we have Peer Through Depths. Helps us dig for those. That's why in the sideboard we have 1-ofs too. Shadow Storm's a 2-of, but it's a very powerful card, so we're more likely to find it in the matchups we want it. Same with Crows and Grip, same with Combustor Roast, Counterflux, all these 1-ofs. They get more powerful when we have cards like Peer Through Depths that really let us access more of our library than our opponent's decks. Now, talking about Battle for Zendikar and the changes in that, there's actually a few that are interesting to consider with Scapeshift. First of all are the new dual lands that we get. The new dual lands are kind of like these shock lands, as in their card type is like the blue-red one is like a land, island, mountain, or mountain forest. However, the clause for them is when they come to play tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So this deck actually plays a lot of basics compared to other modern decks, so a lot of the time you'll be able to put them into play untapped. So I think they're actually going to be a good addition. You still want majority of these lands because they can come into play untapped no matter what, so you just have to pay 2 life. But you definitely want a few of the new lands because sometimes you can fetch for them untapped, and you don't have to pay the life, and that's nice. One thing to note actually is my fetch lands should just be Misty Rainforest. I just don't have them online. But the deck should have 3-4 Misty Rainforest for your fetch lands instead of this mix. But these are good substitutes if you're on a budget. What was I gonna say? With Battle for Zendikar, the only one we get for the dual lands is the red-green one. I forget what it's called, but we get the red-green dual land. So what I would recommend is probably switch out like 1 mountain for one of those, because you still get the same amount of mountains, but basic mountain in general is the worst land in the deck because it just doesn't provide as many sources for any of the other stuff in your deck. When the other lands come out, I would say you want to add for sure one of the blue-red ones and one of the blue-green ones. And I think overall what you'll end up doing is maybe cut 1 fetch land, or maybe cut a Flooded Grove or something, and move up to 11 lands that count as a mountain instead of 10. Usually you don't have an issue of drawing too many mountains in this deck, but I think that moving up to 11 just makes it a little bit better. Just even more secure that you'll never draw too many mountains and have a issue of not being able to kill them because you can't search for enough to deal damage. In terms of other cards in Battle for Zendikar, Bring to Light is a card that people want to shove into the Scapeshift deck. And if you guys don't know what it is, it's green, blue, and 3 mana, so 5 mana overall. It's sorcery, and it has Converge, which is the new mechanics. It's kind of like Sunburst in the sense that it counts how much mana, or what colors of mana you spend to cast the spell, and you get to search your deck for a creature spell or creature instant sorcery card of that converted mana cost and cast it without paying its cost. So it's 5 mana, and if you pay 4 colors into it, you get to search for a 4-drop, or you pay 3 colors, you get a search for a 3-drop. Now, Scapeshift right now is a 3-color deck, but if you make it a 4-color deck, usually adding white is what people want to do, then you can Bring to Light, search for Scapeshift, and people are like, oh, you can use that as like your 5th through 8th Scapeshift, or play like maybe 3 and 3, and then that card is also, it can search for like Anger the Gods, or search for X or Y or Z. I think that personally is not the way I want to play this deck. First of all, it costs 1 more mana, so it's a little awkward. Like, sometimes when you go off, you need every mana to do things like search for tomorrow into Scapeshift on the same turn, or like, you know, Scapeshift leaving up Remand or leaving up Cryptic or playing around Mana Leak. And the extra mana is a little annoying. Also, adding a 4th color to this deck is not exactly what you want to do. In a deck where you have to hit triple blue, double green, double red, adding white or black is actually, I think, a fairly high cost. It might cost like your mana base early. You might not be able to develop your early drops exactly how you want to. And I think a lot of decks in Modern can punish you for being a bit slower, like Burn decks, Affinity decks, Merfolk decks. These aggressive decks that are very popular right now are very good at punishing people for having slower mana bases or mana bases that are more vulnerable to issues. And I think adding a 4th or 5th color to Scapeshift would do that. So I personally I don't think Bring to Light's going to be good. When it comes out, I probably will test a version with Bring to Light, and I might do some videos or I might just stream it. But it's good to talk about because, you know, people have been thinking that's going to be really good. It might be, but for my opinion as a Scapeshift player, it doesn't seem like something that I would want. But I think that's everything actually for that. Like I said, we're going to do a daily today, and I'll go over more of the plays and get more of an idea about the deck. But this is our current list, and I hope you guys like it, and stay tuned for the gameplay videos.